Good evening and welcome back to the Clergy Cafe. It's great to have you with us. Yes, thanks for joining us once again. It's great to have you with us. Who can believe it? Another week has gone and we are once again back with the Clergy Cafe, and we are going to continue with our religious life specials. Now, I don't want you to get a bit confused. This is not a repeat. This is a new script. It's a whole new one. And we're welcoming once again the FCJ sisters. However, just to start off with, as always, I'm going to bring in Father Chris into the Clergy Cafe tonight and say hi. Good evening, Father Chris. How are you doing?
Good evening, Sandy. I'm good, thank you. You okay?
Very well, thank you. Now, this is the first time we've got a little bit of new technology tonight, Father Chris, and you can see yourself now live on the Clergy Cafe. We're learning new things every day.
It's a bit scary.
Hard to believe we're a week away from Ash Wednesday.
I know, that's come around quick, hasn't it?
I do not know where it's gone. We were doing it, we're planning today for next week, and I just think it's just come around so quickly. But once again, thanks for joining us tonight. Anything exciting happening this week?
I don't think so. I think it's all fairly quiet and normal at the moment.
Do you know what? That's one of the things that's happening a lot at the minute. You ask me, what are you up to this week? I'm in the house. Not doing very much this week. And that's the thing. It's just one of the things that's happening nowadays. But as always, it is great to have you with us. And we look forward to welcoming you back in at the end.
Cheers. Thanks, Sandy.
So, as I said, tonight isn't a repeat. It's a whole new script, and we are welcoming back Sister MaryAnne and Sister Lynne, two of the FCJ sisters. They've agreed once again to say yes to the Clergy Cafe. I don't know what I had to do to twist their arms, but they've agreed it once again. So, it really is good to have them with us. So I'm just going to give you a brief little introduction to each one. Sister MaryAnne was born in Malta, and she's one sister, and she grew up in a committed Catholic family, surrounded by many relatives who were mostly living in the same village. It was when she was in sixth form that a Jesuit chaplain introduced her to Ignatian spirituality, and it highly appealed to her. The Jesuits founded by St. Ignatius of Loyola. Sister MaryAnne came to the UK for a short time to explore her vocation, and a year later she entered the community. She completed her formation in London, and after that was sent to Liverpool, where she teaches maths in the FCJ school there. Sister MaryAnne, alongside Sister Lynne, is now involved in setting up the new Centre of Community, Young People and Faith Development, the FCJ Centre of St Hugh's. Sister Lynne was born in Lancashire, and at the age of 14 went on retreat in the Lake District. And it was there that she began to deepen her sense of more adult faith. Beginning to question and get more involved in her faith, she helped set up a youth faith and social group in her parish. At the age of 22, she joined the community of FCJ sisters. Sister Lynne has taught physics at schools in London and Liverpool. In London, she also set up a university chaplaincy. And most recently, she has been involved as a vocations director for the European province of the FCJ sisters for several years now. So, it is really, really good to have both Sister MaryAnne and Sister Lynne with us tonight. And I'm just going to repeat it. It's not a repeat. This is all new material, new things to talk about. And the reason why I've invited Sister MaryAnne and Sister Lynne back is last time we finished the broadcast by saying there was so much more we could have spoken about. There was so many more lines of thought that we'd done. There were so many questions that we missed out in the original script. So, we thought, once again, we would invite them back. So, I'm just going to bring them in now. Sister Lynne, Sister MaryAnne, welcome to the Clergy Cafe. It's great to have you with us once again, and thank you for joining us. How are you both doing?
Okay, yes, still at home. Yeah, really good. Enjoying some brisk walks.
It's kind of scary that we had this conversation during Advent. We were in a similar situation. We're still in a similar situation, and we're having the conversation again. But thank you very much for joining us tonight. It really is great to have you. We're just going to crack on, because again, we said this before we started. I'm sure we're going to end up missing questions somewhere along the lines, but we'll try and stick to the script where possible. And tonight we're focusing much more on the religious life, the vocation to religious life. And I just MaryAnne, would like you to start, if you don't mind. Define for us what a vocation is and what it means to both of you, sort of in religious context and vocation in the wider context as well.
Well, vocation in a secular context, we teach, for example, vocational subjects. It's something about your own passion. What is it that makes you makes you tick, makes you happy? When I'm talking with students about this, I say, what is it that you enjoy doing? And finding your vocation is finding that niche, finding that place where you think this makes me happy, makes me fulfilled, and I'm the best I can be. And in a sense, in a religious context, it's also very similar to that. There's a lovely quote that I really like that says, vocation is where your passion and God's passion meet for the world. Something about where, you are fully alive. God's life is fully alive in you. God is fully intertwined with your life. And so it spills out into the world in service. So I think vocation is something about that, something about the thing that makes, gets that little glint in our eyes and that little smile and that kind of spring in our steps and enables us to really be the best we can be in the world.
I'm pleased you used that quote because I was trying to find it and I couldn't remember what it was. But would you agree that a vocation is something deeply, deeply personal as well?
Yes. And, nobody can say, oh, I think you should be. It's something that, is you think about, you discern, you have an idea, you check it out and you test it over time before you kind of make a step and make a decision. It is deeply, deeply personal. A lot of people ask me, why are you an FCJ sister? And I can say a lot of things about that. But really, at the end of the day, I just felt it was the right thing. And you can't explain why that is.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with the compliments as well just now, because clearly you're both very young. When people think of religious life, you're both very young. And for both of you, you entered at a young age. So, Sister Lynne, for you, what would you say to young people who are contemplating a vocation?
Yeah, well, I suppose the first thing I'd say is that vocation isn't only about religious life. So, we're all contemplating our vocation in a way. But people said to me when I was entering, oh, you're very young, you're too young to make such a big decision. I think in a way you're living your vocation all the time. You're moving towards being the person you're called to be all the time. And you begin that really quite young. So, you mentioned that in introducing me that it was at about the age 14 that I began to really deepen my faith and have a greater understanding of it. And I don't think I was too young. That was just the natural me. I was finding something that really captured my heart, captured my imagination. So I suppose I'd just say to young people, follow your heart, let yourself be guided by what you interiorly know is the right next step, and your vocation will unfold ahead of you. And looking back, I was fairly young to join religious life, but I don't regret it for a minute. I think I made a really good, solid decision, and I've been really happy.
And what would you say were some of the challenges that you faced in that? Obviously, you said there that people saying to you, you're too young for this, but what other challenges did you face?
Yeah, I think, I had to make a bit of a decision around what I would do. So I'd thought, and I think we've talked about this before, I'd thought about working on military aircraft, and suddenly I was like, you can't really do that as a sister. So I had a bit of a change of career and looked at teaching. My friends, my family were very concerned that I was making a decision quite young. And I suppose, you're making a choice for religious life. You're making a choice not to get married as well. So there were some big decisions to make. But in a way, you don't make all of those decisions all at the same time. You make the next right step. And that leads you on to, you take on the whole package then.
Mm.
So yeah, they were challenges in many ways. They were big, serious decisions to make, but it just happened quite naturally, I think.
Mm. And I mean, one of the things we said last week was that actually it's almost every day is that choice for God. Every day you recommit to saying yes to God. And in many ways, that's the same for those of us who aren't religious.
Exactly. And I had no idea, at 22 when I entered, I thought I knew what I was choosing. But of course, what religious life is like now compared to what it was like when I first entered, it's a whole other thing. You don't know really what you're saying yes to. But God's call is a bit like that. God calls you and you want to say yes. It gives you a sense of joy to say yes, but you don't know what it's going to entail necessarily.
And Sister MaryAnne, you actually didn't tell your family at first. So obviously that was a challenge that you had to overcome. What was the reaction like when you eventually told them?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I didn't tell my family is because I knew when I was looking for an Ignatian congregation, I knew there were no Ignatian congregations so I knew it would mean me having to go abroad. And I kind of didn't want to worry them. And I wasn't sure myself. So I was kind of checking it out. And I didn't want to say, oh, I'm thinking of this. And they get all worried. And then I'm not doing it. So, I wanted to be a bit more sure. I grew in a very Catholic environment. So my family, my immediate family, my mum and dad were a little bit like, are you sure you're doing, are you sure you're all right? Are you sure you're happy? Is this okay? My grandmother was just delighted. I've always wanted to have a nun in the family. So that was really lovely. And she came for my first vows, which was just lovely. So they were, and even my mum and dad, although they were, obviously asking the questions, they were very, very supportive and wanted me to be happy. And one of the things that my mum was worried about, she said, I can't imagine you in religious life in Malta tends to be a bit more restrictive. And she said, I can't quite imagine you there. You won't be happy. And when she came and she met some of the FCJ sisters, she kind of could imagine me there. She could imagine me happy, fulfilled. So I think that kind of put her mind at rest. And it was a challenge discerning it on my own, thinking who to say it to, who not to. You don't want to kind of broadcast something, it's a personal thing.
And what would be your advice to somebody that's maybe sat there thinking, should I tell my family? What would you say to them?
I think I wouldn't say definitely tell them or definitely not tell them, but definitely find somebody you can talk to about this. And as it becomes, if it does become more solid in your heart, then yes, do feel, a bit more confident to share it with a few people. But, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. It just needs to feel right. And families are different. I knew that at the end of the day, my family would support me. But some families maybe are not so religious, or there's it just depends on the person. And really, you need to make whatever choice will help you to be free to really continue to defend this. Because making a good choice means that you're free. You're not coerced either way. Whether somebody is just delighted you're going to be a nun and has already made you make final vows in their head, or maybe they're saying you're definitely not, and and then you're not free on the other end.
It's amazing also when you talk about how your grandmother was like, yes, we always wanted. I think there seems to be something like that in most families.
Yes, yeah. I suppose in a traditionally Catholic family, there's always that, especially the older generation, it's, I suppose, honor for them or something. I was like, oh. My grandmother is still alive and she's absolutely, I love her. Prays for me every day, and I think, she's just a gem.
And it is incredible that older generation, isn't it? Sister Lynne, I'm about to probably ask you the biggest question that you could ever ask. Tell us a bit about the FCJ sisters, obviously the Faithful Companions of Jesus. Tell us what they stand for and obviously who they were founded by.
Okay, so FCJ stands for Faithful Companions of Jesus. We're founded in France 201 years ago. So it was our bicentenary last year, in the middle of the lockdown. We were founded by a French woman, Marie-Madeleine Douay, who, as I was saying to someone last night, was not born a nun. You know, she had a whole other life before she decided, or she was called to found a religious congregation. So she was she had got married, and her husband died and left her pregnant with their first child. So quite a sad part to her story. She's a French noblewoman. And then in seeking to educate her child and looking to be a really good mum, she encountered the Jesuits, and was inspired by the spirituality of St. Ignatius of Loyola. So she wanted to then gather women who could follow that spirituality, because there's no women Jesuits. So she founded it, over time anyway, she founded the congregation. So we have the same spirituality and the same way of life, the same constitutions as the Jesuits do, although they're a really big congregation and we're quite a small one.
So in this country, if somebody approaches us wanting to be an FCJ, I think the first thing I would do is I would get them in contact with Lynne, who's the vocations director. But also, you know, it's not like tomorrow you enter. It's a long process. Doesn't have to be very long, but it's a process of discernment, of the person getting to know us, meeting maybe a variety of sisters, kind of reading something about our story, having some sessions with a person, usually Lynne or somebody like that, where they kind of share something of where is it that the charism of our society is echoing in their heart, and how can they explore that a little bit more. So once that process of discernment and kind of talking about it and letting it sink in a little bit more happens, then there are formal processes. So the first step is somebody applies to be what's called a postulant. The word postulare is to ask. So that's a time for asking. So the person is asking themselves, is this the right place for me? The society is asking themselves, is this the right person for us? And the person has got time to ask the questions, what is this about? What about the vows? What about community? They're kind of getting to know. And then once they've made that, and postulancy takes between 6 months, even up to 2 years, depending on the person, whether they've got a job or a course they have to finish, or all of those kind of really practical things. Once that finishes, there is the much more formal 2 years of novitiate, where the person is still in one way discerning, but they've made like some decision for joining, and they're being formed in our institutions, in our way of life, in a life of prayer, in being part of a community. When a person, even before they're a postulant, they often have the opportunity to come and spend, say, 3 months, or depending on, it's always depending for us, depending on their situation, but to actually live the life. It's not enough to read a textbook about this. It's about, does this feel right for me? Because I suppose on the textbook there are a variety of religious orders that are equally good, equally God's work. Which one do we fit in? And I think it's that experience and growing into it. But the first thing you would do is kind of pray about it and meet some people informally and explore that way.
But so what I'm picking up from you there is actually, it's very much about that individual person.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. It is a process that is individual for the person. This is not a factory. Every person comes, and by coming, they enrich the congregation. They are enriched by the congregation, and the congregation changes because their skills are added. Their way of knowing God is added, even though together we fit as well. There is a commonality, a common charism, but each person has a slightly individual way of expressing it. So it is about accompanying each person. And this is not about how we can get lots of people in. It's about finding, is that person going to be the best person they can be with us? And are we going to grow alongside them? And if it is, then it's a really joyful thing. But if it isn't, then it's another answer in their discernment. There's a failure. It's just, I've asked a question and the answer was not yes.
Yeah. And so I would presume there's been people who have come along, said I was really interested in joining, and then gone in a different direction, possibly to find another religious order.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, someone might approach me, for example, because I'm just the vocations director they know. But then you're looking to see where does their personal charism, where's their gift, their calling from God. And quite often that will be that I might point them in the direction of a different sort of community, or quite often it's also that they're going to explore our community. But yeah, the different religious congregations have a really different family feel. So you have to find where's their fit.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're hoping to explore over this series of the Clergy Cafe, to try and just pick out some of the differences and actually to celebrate religious life. One of the things, both of you have mentioned the word nun, okay? Now, I think in everybody's head there's sometimes a little thing that goes, bing, yes, I know what a nun is. But actually, there's actually quite a big difference between what you maybe call a nun and a sister. Would you just pick up on maybe some of the differences for us?
Yes. Well, really it's the sound of music that's in their head. So we would say, technically, we are apostolic religious sisters. A nun is a person who is a contemplative religious. So say the Carmelites, they are really nuns. And we would be the apostolic religious sisters. So in many ways there is no difference. We're all following a call from God. We all make very similar vows that are the vows of poverty, chastity and obedience, in most people in those words, but some in slightly different words, but it's the same, the evangelical counsels. So in those things we're very similar. But the ones you would call nuns, they'll be the ones who tend to be contemplative. So they stay in their own monastery or convent, and their main work is to pray, and they kind of hold the world in prayer. Whereas for us, we would tend to be much more spread out. We live in smaller groups so that we can, because I suppose one of our main reasons for being is for mission, is to respond to God's call in the world. And we would live in smaller groups and we would go out. Obviously there are common that we would all pray, but the prayer of the monastic communities or the enclosed communities would be much more regular. If you're a poor, I think they would pray 7 times a day, much more formalized in particular times. I can't be teaching maths and praying 7 times a day. So our prayer life would be different. And obviously our engagement with the world would be different. Would you say anything else?
I remember first meeting a religious sister who I thought I had none in my head. And it just wasn't what I'd expected at all. I was expecting, like you say, the sound of music, and it really isn't. And I suppose one of the things we picked up over the weeks in the Clergy Cafe is that behind a priest is a human being, and behind a sister or a nun is the same thing as well. That at the end of the day, you are both human beings, as we can see.
Yes.
Now, one of the things, obviously, talking about a nun and a sister, we mentioned there's the difference in maybe like the habit as well. Would you just describe how maybe over the years, and I have seen some good pictures, I tried to get some good ones for tonight, but I couldn't get any ones that I was sure was right. Tell us how maybe the FCJ habit has changed over the years.
Yeah, so I guess that our habits, you could have looked at us maybe 50, 60 years ago, and we would have looked like people expect a nun sound of music. Probably our habit developed from the widow's dress of the 1800s in France, because that's what our foundress was. She was wearing the widow's dress of the 1800s. So we had a black bonnet, and a long black dress with a sort of little thing around here. And then as the church changed, and religious dress for women changed with the church, we also put on top of the bonnet of a long black veil. So we had an ankle length long black dress, and a black bonnet, and then a long black veil on top. I've never worn this. And then again with the Second Vatican Council, when religious communities were asked to go back to their roots and ask themselves, why are you doing what it is that you're doing? We began to look at ourselves, and the understanding that really our foundress, Mary Magdalene, was wearing the ordinary dress of her time. So we began to make changes to the habit. So I think the first thing that they did was the dress came up to the calf, and they had a shorter veil rather than the very long veil, more practical for the change of work that was happening. People going out to work, going out to teach in different schools. So those sort of changes began. We dispensed with the bonnet, and we just had a religious veil. And then slowly, we actually never had our own formalized religious veil, I think, after the initial veil. So slowly then that began to change. So certainly by the time I entered, or by the time I first met the FCJs, the rule was that you were to wear either navy blue or so our sisters in hot countries wore beige, and our sisters in colder climes tended to wear navy blue a lot more. And then they dispensed with the veil. The veil was optional. So when I first entered, I had to wear navy blue. I was the first year to have entered where, in fact, that changed just as I was entering. So colours began to come in, and we could wear other things. So when it came to making vows, I chose to wear a bright red dress. I think the rebel in me came out.
So would any of the sisters in any of your communities still wear some form of habit?
Yeah. The sisters, for example, in Italy, tend to wear navy blue. Yeah, it's not formalized. They choose to do that because the culture is, it fits in with the culture. Us in Indonesia tend to wear slightly more like uniform dress. We all wear a cross. So asked to wear this, and we wear it fairly faithfully. I think almost everyone will wear it all the time. We're asked to as a public witness. And it's surprising, I know that my dress might not look like a sister, but I am regularly recognized. And I think it's when a couple of you are wearing this big badge, people wear quite quickly that this is not a fashion item. So we're asked to wear clothing that is appropriate, simple and appropriate to the country in which we're living. So if I go to a country where it would be really quite shocking for a sister to be in trousers, then I will wear a skirt. We make sure that our dress is simple and isn't going to be disturbing for some.
Yeah. And would you say that there's a place for the habit in today's society?
Absolutely. I think, it's a sign of witness. It's a great sign of witness. It's just that different groups witness in different ways. So for us, I don't think it's particularly, it's not what we've chosen to do. And I suppose not wearing the habit enables people to meet me without that sort of, oh gosh, that's a sister. And so it opens up some doors, and wearing a habit opens up different doors. I think there's a place for both in the church.
And that's the wonderful thing about the church. You look at religious life, and there's such diversity and many different ways of expressing a person wanting to commit themselves to God and a person wanting to commit themselves to the service of the world. And I think there is definitely a place for everything, the whole kind of continuum of difference because God is ever creative. We're not all the same. That's great.
And so what would an average day look like for both? I know both of you have got very different roles, and maybe I don't think maybe there's such a thing as an average day, but what would a rough pattern of the day look like?
Yeah, rough pattern we can do. Each day does tend to be quite different. So in this community here, we would meet together at 7 o'clock for prayer. So we would have a prayer in the morning together just to start the day, and then we'd have breakfast. Who are a bit more early birds would have gotten up earlier than that to do their own personal prayer. I need to find that time later on in the day because I am not good in the mornings. But we both be together at 7 and we would pray together. And then we would have a quick breakfast together. And then it depends. If I'm in school, for example, I've gone off to school or gone off to my little room to do my online teaching. And so, there's a working day, which would finish at maybe about 5:30. And then we kind of return back. One of us would cook, either ourselves or somebody else in the community would cook. And we would eat together around 6 o'clock, and we would have evening prayer together. Now that kind of is a bit of a movable feast. Sometimes we eat before we pray, and sometimes we eat after we pray. It kind of depends. Now that we've got this center and there's a few more things established in this FCJ center, we do tend to have some events in the evening. So there are days when we kind of try and take a little break in the afternoon, so that we're ready in the evening. A few of us in this community like walking, so we try and go out for a walk, especially at the moment in lockdown. Sing together, and it's also healthy. So our prayer is our day is prayer, is work, and it's just some time to be together, relaxing, and also then some time to be on our own and get our ordinary things sorted out.
You would have thought you'd planned that slip of the tongue, because obviously prayer is an important part to your day, and for each different religious community there's different styles and ways of praying. What would you say was maybe some unique styles or ways of praying, or just general ways of praying for you as FCJs?
Yeah, well, we follow Ignatian spirituality, so the spirituality of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and for him, the key thing was that of finding God in all things. So that's not just a get out of prayer easily sort of card where, God's in all things, so I can actually sit down and pray. It's about recognizing the presence of God when we come to pray, recognizing the presence of God also in how God has been during my day. So one of the ways of prayer that we use, which often we do in the evening, is an examen. So a looking back and noticing the sort of the presence of God, where God was during my day, and really giving thanks to God for that. Another, so MaryAnne mentioned the fact that we have at least an hour of personal prayer every day. And quite often we might pray with scripture for that. We might use a form of prayer called imaginative contemplation, where we let God act through our imagination, and we encounter the scriptures in a different way. So we have a pattern of prayer that includes a regular retreat, 8-day retreat every year, and longer retreats at other points. So yeah, these are all parts. We do say the office together, but not always. We don't have a commitment that we have to say the office, whereas some congregations might do that.
Yeah.
And we have a lovely tradition of holy hour. So across the whole congregation, we would have a holy hour, not at the same time because we're worldwide, but usually on a Thursday evening, we have this tradition of holy hour. So we know that our FCJ sisters are all united with us on a Thursday prayer.
And it's Thursday because we were founded on Holy Thursday.
And that's a lovely tradition that's then carried on for many, many years. That really is incredible. One of the big things that as a congregation you did was you adopted the Jesuits' constitutions. And that was formally agreed the year after I was born, in 1985. It was really interesting to find that out, actually. What other traits would you say that the FCGs have picked up that from the sort of Ignatian spirituality, Jesuit spirituality, that maybe are still present today?
Yeah, well, the Jesuit constitutions are like the blueprint, I suppose. So they have information about formation, about what is important. They have beautiful pieces about the why and the wherefore and how we live the vows, and in a sense they inform how we do things. So, for example, in our formation, just like the Jesuits, because it's the same book, we would have an experience of pilgrimage. We would have an experience of working with people who are destitute, maybe homeless or in a hospice or things like that. An experience of teaching the faith, experience of catechesis, the 30-day retreat, which is I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And then there's a lovely one of the other experiences or experiments they're called in Ignatian speak. Is the ordinary. So, a person who's in formation will do the ordinary. So the cleaning and the cooking and all of those things that are ordinary. And, in a sense, realizing that even in them, or also in them, God is found. So I think there's a lot from the Ignatian tradition that we certainly have taken, and we use. And in a sense, as I was saying, on the textbook, we're very similar to but obviously it's a different field. We're women and we're smaller. Yeah.
And I think that's really important. There is a massive difference in feel between a woman's congregation and a man's congregation, because I think sometimes men aren't that good at living together. Women are much better at living together.
We wouldn't want to say anything about it.
You mentioned that the 30-day retreat. Have either of you done the 30-day retreat?
Yeah.
So in novitiate, so in that 2 years, we would all do the 30-day retreat. So both of us have done it.
Yeah. So we do it when we first enter, and then usually around 10 years after final vows, we go back and we do formation. We do an extra year of formation, and we do the 30-day retreat again. So in fact, I've done the 30 days twice in my life, 30-day silent retreat. And you can also do the spiritual exercises. We tend to call it the 30 days, but it's called the spiritual exercises. And you can do that in your daily life as well. So as a year-long retreat. So we've both directed that year-long retreat for other people, but also I've certainly done it. I don't know whether you've done it as in that form, but I've done that as well.
So for the full 30 days, did you manage to stay silent for the whole time?
It was really funny. When I first did it, so I was quite young when I entered, and the first day, so, I'm there for 30 days of silence. In fact, you meet your spiritual director and you do go to mass. So you do have a chance to move your mouth because you can say the responses. It's not about it's about an inner silence, really. But you don't have other conversation. You don't listen to the radio or anything like that. But I remember I sort of ticked off the first day and thought, a 30th, excellent. And then the second day, a 15th, and then the third day, a 10th. And I got down and I was like, oh my goodness, I've got 5, 6 to go. I'm never going to get through this. But once I'd got over that sort of panic, it's an extraordinary experience. Of course, then when I did it the second time, I was more clued into what was happening. But also that bit more mature, I suppose. So it was just an incredible, beautiful experience.
I would certainly struggle. I had the privilege of hosting in a retreat centre a week-long silent retreat, and it was so hard. See, serving meals to people, and there was banging on the table because they wanted the salt. I really, really struggled. And I take my hat off that you can do it because
We train people in. So when you first join, you might do a retreat day, and then you might do a weekend, and you build up.
It is an amazingly life-changing experience, and I mean, you can see from here, I can talk forever. People thought, you're never going to do it, but it's not like that. It's not, it's the way you are led, because it's, it is structured. You're not kind of left in silence and for 30 days, there's a structure and there's a rhythm. And as you move into the retreat, you get more and more silent inside. And it is, like then prayer becomes, in a sense, much more, I don't know, your whole life really does become, your whole day really does become a prayer. And it is life-changing. You are faced, I suppose you're faced with yourself without any of the distractions. And that, that is challenging, but it's also very freeing.
Yeah, you sort of have 30 days of it's you and God, and really challenges you to say, what do I really believe? Pushes you back on this sort of reliance on God and on faith, and you encounter God in a whole new way.
I do also wonder, this I'm throwing a curveball in here potentially, back maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, that might have been easier for some of your sisters or for some people participating in 30-day retreat. However, nowadays, trying to shut off from the world, especially for our young people, is a massive challenge. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think in formation, we actually have, it's part of the formation process, is just understanding the need for silence in our life, So, things like not always being attached to your phone, not always being online. Those things, they're part of modern life. It's not that we don't have those things, but you also need to understand in yourself just the significance of being silent. So it's a process of formation, and if you're going to enter into formation, it's because you want to be formed, you want to grow in something. I think the 30-day retreat would have been much easier in the past, partly because our sisters had they lived in the time of the great silence where they didn't speak things, but they also only spoke during the day when it was necessary, so they didn't engage in chit chat either. So other thing.
So some people might say that religious life's quite restricted, or restrictive. But what would you say to that? And maybe what have been some of the experiences that religious life has given you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I don't think it's restrictive. There's things that we choose not to do, or there's things that we vowed, that I'm going to be celibate. So that sets a whole parameter around my life. But then I think every life, you set parameters, you set your boundaries around it and say, this is the structure in which I'm going to live my life. Apart from that, I would say it has been the most incredible, broadening, full of opportunities. I've done all sorts of things I would never have done. I mean, I would never have appeared live on by nature. There's loads of experiences that I've had, and I think it pushes us. We live intergenerationally, we live internationally, we travel, we encounter people from like people. I've been to the palace, but I've also MaryAnne's worked on a rubbish dump. You have such incredible experiences that broaden your mind and broaden your perspective on the world. I think it's an incredible way of life.
It gives you the opportunity to do, like some people will see a need and they think, well, I wish I could do something about it. And sometimes we can. And I think that's the freedom that it gives us, that sometimes we can respond when other people, due to their commitments, cannot.
I have a vow of poverty, so I can't necessarily afford the best car or anything like that. But that poverty also means I don't need to worry that I'm not in full-time paid work. It frees you in other ways.
It's incredible for me. That is incredible. That actually that's the difference, is that freedom that you have there. Now, one of the big things that you've done, you were both involved in setting up the Camino Companions. Now, I'm sure we could talk about this topic for a long time. What tell us, first of all, I've had the privilege of doing the Camino, so I know what the Camino is. A lot of people out there might not know what the Camino is. What would you say? What's the Camino, and what is Camino Companions?
Well, the Camino is a very ancient pilgrimage way. So, and we're talking, hundreds of years, and it's a pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, which is where the bones of Saint James, the apostle, are thought to be buried. So Santiago is Saint James. The bones of Saint James were found there, and there's a beautiful church, basilica probably, and it became a place of pilgrimage. And in from medieval times, people walked from many places in Europe to get to Compostela. So it's just a very, very ancient route. So basically, you walk towards this holy place. So sure, quite a few people will do this walk for like a sport reason or for but many people would do it for a religious reason. You go on a pilgrimage to encounter God, to discover something about yourself, to maybe let go of something, maybe to deal with a tragedy or a bereavement. People go for a long walk to kind of do that. And in recent years, the Camino has become again a very, very popular route. And people walk, and you can walk for a whole month. We've met people who've walked from Switzerland. We met somebody who walked from Budapest all the way to the north of Spain. So you can take a very long walk if you want to. And it's life-changing for people. People walk, and as they walk, they start with an idea of why they're walking, or they want to walk because they like walking. And as they walk, and the rhythm of the days and the people that they meet and the conversations they have, it changes them. And God reveals God's self to them, I suppose, is one way of saying. So the Camino itself, on a practical level, if you walk from the edge of Spain by the Pyrenees.
Yep, Pyrenees.
I'm not really good at geography. The Pyrenees, from the mountains there, you can start from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is still in France, or you can start up over the mountains on the other side. And there are these places called albergues. You can't stay in a hotel if you want to, but there are places that are pilgrim places. So you sleep in a bunk bed, you're carrying what you need on your back. It's a life of real simplicity. And so because it's these albergues, these bunk beds, and there's a communal part of it. So you do meet the same people and you get to know their story. And as you walk, that enriches you. And you're often in places where you stop for the night. There might be a church, there might be a place where you can go in, and maybe there might be prayers organized. So there's also kind of a religious theme going through all the way. And then you arrive in Santiago, which is, and you go and visit the saint, and you rejoice that you have met the others at your destination. But you also somehow look back and think about it. So that's where Camino Companions comes in. We can talk about that.
Yeah, so a number of years ago, we got together with some other religious and said, when you get to Santiago as an English-speaking pilgrim, there was, at that time, there was no religious welcome or anything for English-speaking pilgrims. So unless you spoke Spanish, it was quite a commercial end to your pilgrimage. So we just decided to go out there for 3 weeks in the summer, a group of religious together, and just stand around in the street and offer an opportunity to talk through what had happened to pilgrims, because people encounter all sorts as they come along. So just a space for them to talk, a space for prayer, and some sort of English speaking welcome and mass in English. And we encouraged other people to come along and help, and that just began to grow, I suppose. And eventually our society, our FCJ society, decided we would invest in doing this during the main Camino months full time. So we have a community out there for 7 or 8 months of the year who provide the English speaking welcome at the end of the Camino, provide a space for people to talk, to reflect on their experience, and they also ensure that there is an English speaking mass for pilgrims when they arrive. Because there's the big pilgrim mass which everyone wants to go to, but then to deepen it and to have an opportunity, if you're staying in Santiago for a few days, to enter into the spirituality of the Camino. So that's what our sisters do now.
It was one of the things that was on my list to do, and I never got around to it while I'm there. And you could have been there when I was there. You never know. What would you say to maybe a younger person or a not so young person? Because one of the things that I encountered was people of all ages. People who were 60, 70, 80. I met an 83-year-old man who'd been walking for months, but he was quite happy just plodding away at his own pace. What would you say to maybe a young person that's thinking about doing the Camino? What should they do?
Go for it.
Go for it, and don't carry very much. You need very little. In fact, whatever you think you need less. The less you carry, the better, just physically, but also, I think spiritually, you realize, in fact, I don't need very much, and that other people are there and I can rely on them. I think there's a great gift in learning that I can rely on God, I can rely on other people, and that strangers are benevolent, that strangers will help and will guide, and that God is around. It's a great thing. And, if you're going to do it and you're not sure about walking, you can just do the last 100 kilometers where everything is really set up and, it's easy and you can't get lost.
It's amazing you say that God will provide. I walked for a couple of days with a lad from America who decided he was not going to bring a towel. So he didn't bring a towel and he was drying himself with his t-shirts, and I thought it was great. I had 2 towels and I had far too much stuff with me, so it was very quickly, there's a towel for you, it's yours. And it's things that people do really, really make a difference along the way. It really is incredible.
Wonderful, wonderful people. We've a good number of times actually, but just people are so generous and so beautiful, and
and there's just the loveliness of, one time we were in a place and the albergue was full, and yet there was about 14 pilgrims, no beds, and they realized we were religious, so they said there is a little church, you can sleep in the church. And they gave me the key, this big metal key. They said, here you are, you're a religious, hermanas. He gave me the key and he said, you can use this church. And so we slept in this kind of old, beautiful church. And I suppose that's part of it. When you are religious, people kind of think, oh yeah, I can trust you to do this job. So I ended up with the key to this church. So these things happen on the Camino that you don't expect. If anyone's thinking of doing it, go for it. It is very safe to do on your own. Don't worry about that. But if you don't want to do it on your own, there's plenty of groups that do go, even smaller groups that build a little community.
Yeah, I did it on my own and I felt completely safe. Granted, I think it might be different if there was a woman walking on her own. You might feel differently. But I certainly found people to be absolutely incredible every step of the way. So I'm just very aware. Again, the time is ticking on. So I'm just going to ask you to give your messages to young people. So whoever wants to start can start. What would you say to young people that are contemplating religious life?
Well, I would say it's a wonderful adventure. Go for it. Continue to explore, continue to pray, make time for God, make time for silence in your day. Just a little bit of an advert here. Compass, which is a group of religious who have come together, are doing a program, Compass in Lent. So if you want to meet a variety of religious from all across the spectrum, come and meet us on Fridays. Google Compass, or I'll probably post it on this video, and come and meet in an informal way, and see whether it fits with your heart, and then go for it.
Yeah, and I think I would say, Jesus says in scripture, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full, have it abundantly. So my message is your vocation is already there within you. It's God-given. You don't need to worry too much. You just need to follow your heart, follow your dreams, and let yourself be guided by your faith life. Your vocation is great.
And Sister MaryAnne, if you send me the details for Compass, I'll stick it, like you say, below the video tonight so that people can find that as well. So now we're doing something a little bit differently this time. I'm just going to have to quickly move it slightly. We have started playing Top Trumps. Now I'm just bringing in just beside me here. That's the one from last week. Okay, I know it's a bit small, you can't really see it, but that's the Top Trumps for the Salesians. Now it's not a competition. It's more about a fact-finding mission, this one. And what we're hoping to do is that over the weeks we'll produce our Top Trumps cards. They'll look a little bit like that. And so for the FCG sisters tonight, I'm going to write it down as well, because if I don't, I'll forget it. So what date was the order founded?
1820, 201 years ago.
Okay. Now, that's even. So there you go. You've already top trumped the Salesians. Well done. Congratulations.
Probably the only one.
Andres knew Don Bosco, and our sisters packed the bag for their first missionary endeavour.
Well, there you go. Now that's a fact for you. Numbers in your congregation?
About 200.
So actually, in comparison, a really small congregation.
Very small.
Yeah. Number of houses in the UK?
Go on.
12.
You've top trumped the Salesians again. You're doing well tonight. Well done. They only have got 6 houses. Now, number of countries where your congregation is present?
We're present in 15 countries.
15. The number of saints in your order?
Well...
We've got a venerable. Our foundress is venerable.
Right.
But they're supposed technically 0.
Right.
But we're going to count it as a half.
We'll stick that down as 1 and call it a venerable. We'll put a little brackets there and call it a venerable. Now, this one, the habit. Obviously, we've had the discussion about the habit tonight as well. What would you say if you were to say 1 is no habit and 10 is full habit? Where would you say the FCJ sisters lie there?
I'd say about 3. We have to wear a cross. And we have other sort of norms of dress.
Yeah. And then number of hours in prayer each day. Now what we're saying here, we're using potentially formal prayer, but feel free to stick a couple of extra hours on there if you wish.
You see, we talked about this and we thought 24 because you find God in all things. But probably about 2.5.
Yeah.
2.5. Okay, that's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to compile that, and as I say, it's not a competition, more of a resource that we're going to compile over the next few weeks, and to hopefully produce and publish out for our schools and that if they wish to use that. But thank you for that information. It is incredible when you start to hear numbers. It starts to show you the difference in how different religious congregations really are. So, I'm just aware that I've had Father Chris in the waiting room for a long time. So, thank you very much once again. We have done it again. We've gone overtime again. But I think that's what's going to happen when we speak to you. And so...
Thank you for inviting us.
I just want to say again, thank you very much. Don't go anywhere just yet. We will bring you back in at the end just to say a proper thank you. But I really mean thank you very much for tonight, and we shall see you before we finish. So, Father Chris, I am sorry, I have done it again. We've missed out questions again, so I'm just going to have to bring the FCJ sisters back again to finish the rest of the questions. So, Father Chris, once again, I'm going to start with an apology, and I will hand over to you for our reflection tonight.
Thanks, Sandy. As we begin our time of prayer together this evening, let's make the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. As we listen to an extract from the Gospel from St. John, let's remember that whenever the Gospel is proclaimed, it is Jesus himself speaking to us. Jesus said to his disciples, "This is my commandment, love one another as I have loved you. A man can have no greater love than to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends, if you do what I command you. I shall not call you servants anymore, because a servant does not know his master's business. I call you friends, because I have made known to you everything I have learned from my Father. You did not choose me. No, I chose you, and I commissioned you to go out and to bear fruit that will last. And then the Father will give you anything you ask him in my name. What I command you is to love one another." In that gospel extract we've just listened to, Jesus calls his followers his friends. He calls you his friends. I think that's an amazing thing, that God calls us his friends. He has chosen you to be part of that intimate group of his closest companions. As we explore the different styles of religious life over these weeks, one of the common threads is how all of these women and men consecrate themselves in friendship with Jesus. And it is that relationship with Jesus that sustains them in all the different aspects of their lives and work. For friendships to flourish, they do take a bit of effort, don't they? We need to spend time with our friends. We need to know them better. We need to grow in that relationship. But in true friendships, we want to spend time with our friends. We want to know them better. We want to grow closer to them. And the same is true of our friendship with Jesus Christ. We want and need to spend time with him, to grow closer to him, to love him as he loves us. And as St. Thomas Aquinas once said, there is nothing on this earth more to be prized than true friendship. So as we pray together this evening, let's ask God for that grace of friendship, of companionship with Jesus. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. The Lord be with you. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. Thanks be to God.
Wow, yet again, another incredible night here in the Clergy Cafe. I'm just going to bring everybody back in. No, I'm not. Oh, that one seems to have disappeared. I don't know where that went. So, well, first of all, we'll do this in two parts then. I shall just bring back in. There somewhere. Okay. We were doing so well tonight. Sister Lynne, Sister MaryAnne, thank you once again for joining us. I was hoping to have Father Chris in here at the same time, but that one never worked. It's gone somewhere. But again, I do really enjoy speaking to you. I think just the wealth of experience that you come with, and the big thing for me is your passion, and that really comes across. And so thank you for all you are doing, and thank you for all that you will be doing as well. We will post the compass thing below, and if Sister MaryAnne, if you send me the link, the details, we'll also get it out onto our social media platforms as well, so that that we can share that in the coming weeks as well. So just to say thank you very much, and we will, I'm sure, be seeing you again
Thank you for inviting us. It was great. Really great.
It's a pleasure, and thank you so much for everything that you've given. And so we're just going to cut now across and just bring in Father Chris. I was doing so well tonight, and something was going to go wrong, and it had to be that one. I'm just going to put you on the spot here, Father Chris. Obviously, we're approaching Lent. It's hard to believe. Obviously, it was last March that we went into lockdown, and we're again coming into to Lent once more. Any top tips for Lent this year?
Oh gosh, I think Lent's going to be really strange this year, being in lockdown, but I think it gives us great opportunity as well to actually use the season to find that space to spend with Jesus and just to deepen that relationship with him.
Yeah. One of the things we're doing as a team, obviously, we've gone for a whole theme for Lent. We've just themed Lent this year, and we've gone for the wilderness. A survival guide for young people. So we're actually quite excited about trying to look at maybe this year, but maybe surviving Lent as well. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is how actually Lent being penitential, I think this year we've got quite a lot of that going on. We might be able to reflect that. And so we're going to be seeing you during Lent as well, aren't we? You've agreed to say yes to a few bits and pieces.
I keep saying yes.
Keep saying that yes, because I'm not going to complain at all. So, as always, Father Chris, it really is. It's great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and thank you for those words. I'm going to play back some of these recordings into the future and just pick up some of the things, because I don't even realise if you realise what you're saying sometimes, because that was quite powerful. That was quite powerful tonight. So, from me, as always, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Sandy.
So that brings us again to another close from another incredible in a Clergy Cafe. I could speak to Sister MaryAnne and Sister Lynne for hours, and you'd never believe how many questions we've actually cut tonight yet again. So maybe we'll have to do a rerun of all the cut questions for the next one. But again, to Sister Lynne, Sister MaryAnne, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. As I say, next week is the beginning of Lent. It's hard to believe. And as I said to Father Chris there, our theme this year is the wilderness. In many ways, we're all living in the wilderness at the moment. But our question is, how are you going to survive Lent this year? So stay tuned. If you haven't already done so, don't forget that if you click that little button that comes up here, click the subscribe button, and you will know when we go live next time. Now, that's going to be important during Lent because there's a good few live streams coming up. We've got an Ash Wednesday liturgy coming up next Wednesday, so sadly there is no Clergy Cafe because it'll be in this very slot where we're doing our Ash Wednesday liturgy, so please do join us for that. During Lent, we will also be doing Explore. They've been really, really successful during Advent, and we hope they're going to be just as successful live online during Lent as well. Also, keep an eye, as always, on the social medias. They're running across the bottom. We're going mental for Lent as well. There's going to be loads of stuff going out there, loads of resources, loads of stuff that's been produced specifically for this year, because we want to journey this Lent with you. Don't forget to click that follow button, and then you know exactly what is going on across the diocese. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great to have you with us. And we look forward to seeing you in the Clergy Cafe in 2 weeks, where we will be talking to Sister Jill, who is a daughter of Mary Help of Christians. So we will be back in 2 weeks' time in the Clergy Cafe. Thanks once again for joining us. We'll see you soon.